As the world becomes increasingly polarized and external circumstances more and more chaotic, you might feel powerlessness. And yet, this is where the rubber meets the road of transformational work, and this is what we came here for. And today's guest is Regan Caruthers. She's a writer, a spiritual teacher, and the writer of the book Tragic Magic. And she's here to share with us how to take everything happening on the outer world and bring it inside, reconcile everything with love. Join us to find out more.
Soul Nectar Show, the Soul Nectar Show. You're invited, delighted to discover who you are. Anything is possible if you believe. So join us on this beautiful journey. Soul Nectar Show, Soul Nectar Show, Soul Nectar Show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our connection to that which is greater than us, to the great mystery beyond the veil, to those synchronistic moments that lead us inexorably to a deeper understanding of ourselves and what we are doing on this tiny little blue dot called Earth. I am your host, Kerri Hummingbird, and I have been having these conversations week after week for about 9 years now, bringing in beautiful souls to share conversation with us all, to activate a deeper awareness, to give us a different perspective, to help us to navigate life in a more beautiful way. And so today, given everything going on in our collective, in the world, and in the United States, it is really on my heart to address the dichotomy between the feelings that we have about what we are witnessing and then what action do we take? Because there's really big questions, there's all over the map. Some people feel I need to go protest, I need to fight this thing head on, I need to get my sword and my shield. Other people feel like I need to use my magical skills and I need to hex everybody who's doing this stuff. And none of that really sits right with me. And I feel like there's a deeper conversation. There's a deeper inner reconciliation, inner medicine, inner awareness that can happen if we slow down and we realize that this is kind of like an archetypal play before our eyes, showing us what's unresolved within us, that we could actually address inside, take this opportunity, notice where the triggers are, and hold some loving witness to that. So we're going to talk about that process of holding loving witness and get some tools and skills around that from our guest, Regan Caruthers. Welcome, Regan.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here.
I met this lovely soul sister a little while ago, and instant knowing, instant connection. Like, who are you? I know you. You are my sister. And that conversation went on for 3 hours, but I promise you guys we're only going to do about 50 minutes here, because she's just an amazing soul. She's a writer, a spiritual teacher, the founder of a yoga center, Aset Yoga Center, exploring themes of inner transformation, healing, and how to embody the energy of divine love. How do we embody the energy of divine love? She has published a memoir recently called Tragic Magic, and that's available on Amazon. You can go check that out. And it's really a testament to the power of unconditional love, forgiveness, and the discipline required to live life from an unconditionally loving heart. And she's got an amazing story. We're going to hear it today. And, I just welcome you to the show.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I got to figure out how to get down to where you are.
I know. Come visit in person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you're welcome here too anytime.
Yeah. I feel a little travel bug starting to stir. So might take up on that. So wanted to invite you to share with us some of your profound experiences. You've had some really profound experiences. And what I find is so interesting is that many of those experiences have been in some way like kind of exploring the darkness and the light, or the good, you know, what we label as good and what we label as bad and toxic versus wonderful. And it's kind of like been an interesting journey that you've had. And I think it has really given you a unique perspective that you could shed some light for people grappling with, you know, what we're seeing in the collective, and the feeling of toxic masculinity, right? And that feminine response, that feeling of powerlessness. What do you want to share about your journey with dark and light and good and bad and toxic and wonderful, positive?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying embodying the energy of love, the purpose of that is to do it when it's hard. There's no power in embodying love in the Garden of Eden when we're just like walking in unconscious bliss. You know, there's no learning in that. And there's no real power in that either. So, for whatever reason, though I have some insights as to why, I was born into conditions of great contrast. The greatest love I've known and the greatest trauma I've known, you know, through this beloved human called my mother. So it began there, right? In just being part of that polarity, right? And then what I learned later as a response to basically commanding at the age of 9 that my access stop. Because there was such chaotic energy in the home, I used to see a lot of dark stuff, dark entities, dark energy, and it terrified me. And that was usually at night. Though on this fateful day at the age of 9, it was during the day, this entity used to, you know, just follow me around and terrorize me. So anyway, I scream out loud for it all to stop, and it does. Then at 27, I have this dramatic awakening. And what catalyzed that awakening is I woke up in the middle of the night, and that same entity that I said a dramatic goodbye to at the age of 9 was standing at the end of my bed. And I looked at him, not sure why this was my response at the time. I have some theories. And I said, "Oh, it's you. It's only you. I'm not afraid of you." And I went back to sleep. And when I woke up the next morning, all I could feel was divine presence and unconditional love. And I kid, like maybe that whole time, that's what he was trying to facilitate in me. And what I learned post in the incredibly terrifying things that happened for 2 years after my awakening. And, you know, I describe it kind of like Luke Skywalker when he's training to be a Jedi and he's in that really dark portal with Darth Vader and all sorts of other scary things, right? And he's learning how to embody the light in the presence of darkness. Well, that's for whatever reason what I was initiated into learning how to do. And so night after night, I would be pulled out of my body with, you know, by these demonic looking forces. I mean, that was incredibly terrifying. And then to see myself in bed, but I'm somewhere else, you know, ultimately that, you know, taught me that I was eternal and not to worry about stuff. But it wasn't until I could consciously emanate love to these forces that would come and visit me at night and wake me up that they stopped visiting. So I think as it relates to today and our perceptions, you know, which are quite, you know, polar in perspective right now, right? There's a lot of polarity in what the collective sees and believes and feels. But ultimately, for any of us, particularly those that are claiming to be light workers, claiming to be quote unquote spiritual, even though that word, I'm not even sure what that means. Yeah. Can you love it? Can you somehow connect to the inherent innocence of anybody? not how they're behaving, right? Not the choices they're making in the now, but their divine essence, the innocence of the truth of who they are. And can you somehow reflect that back to them so that they have a chance to remember? But as long as all you're mirroring is your fear and your anger and your righteousness and your sense of what's right and wrong, which, by the way, is all the perspective of the ego. You know, as long as that's what you're doing, all you're doing is contributing more to the mess.
Yeah, that's it's really powerful. I feel like I know from my own journey when all of this has been happening and my perspective, because of my mom is 80, right? So I see little old ladies and old men that are at the end of their life, you know, and they're kind of relying on being taken care of, right? Like they're at a place in their life that they can't just get up and go do it themselves. They can't change course now. They're in it. They're in the end of the life shoot, you know, and as a society, we got to hold space for that. I firmly believe, you know, that that's our responsibility as a society, is to care for people when they're vulnerable and they can't care for themselves. And, you know, and especially the elderly and children, right? Like people that really can't care for themselves. And so when I see that being threatened, right, like I get upset, you know, like who is trying to cast elderly people out of nursing homes and on the street? And, you know, so my mind, that's not happening right now yet, but it could happen. And so my mind fixates on that, right? And then starts getting really angry with people that don't see that potential and aren't like, you know, also caring, you know, so then I can make the story that they don't care about elderly people and they just care about themselves, right? And maybe that's true, maybe it's not, who knows? But it's kind of like we can be well-intentioned, right? And we can have honest desires to care for people, honest desires for fairness and equity and justice and, you know, those honest things, but then, you know, get trapped up in ego traps and judgments and, you know, like you said, the mirrors. And if we actually slow down and take a look and see what's going on, like I'm concerned for my mom and my mom's going to be fine. She's, you know, my dad set her up with some money, so she's actually going to be okay. But I extrapolate out to all her friends and people in her circle, and they're all having panic attacks and they're really scared. And then I feel angry that somebody's giving elderly people panic attacks. You know, it's like, why would you do this? Why would you cause so much anxiety? And then I've got to look back to, you know, in my own journey of coming into right relationship with myself, I have had relationships where there's been like microaggressions and, you know, things coming at me. So what? So that I would give up my integrity, so that I would return that kind of energy, so that I would get hooked into that pattern with that person. And what I learned in dismantling one of those long-term relationships was that I had to kind of heal all the triggers within myself and come into a place of beyond forgiveness, even like forgiveness, yes, but even like beyond forgiveness, where it was like gratitude. Like you taught me so much about having good boundaries by doing that relentless behavior. I don't know why you do that, but God bless you, you know? And I've learned how to hold myself and my knowing and my integrity through that process of not engaging with you in the space you want to engage with me in, and not giving you the food you want to eat. You know, I feel like it's food, you know, in some ways, like retaliation and anger and vitriol and hatred and all of that, fear, panic, that's all like food for that aspect of consciousness. And so when I choose not to give it that food, and like you said, you gave it love instead, I had to dig deep. In this case, it was a long-term relationship. I had to dig deep and find compassion within myself for his journey, knowing how he was raised, knowing the parents he had, knowing the alcoholism in the family, knowing you know, how he was raised and come into some compassion for his journey, that that's just somewhere along the line he learned that in order to get attention, he could behave negatively, you know, sort of poke, 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 and do this kind of behavior. And I see that happening at the bigger scale in our country now. And so I recognize the pattern because I've already tangled with this pattern. And yeah, we have to find some way of not losing our personal power to it, right? And also, if we're in repulsion to it, repulsion brings more. It's like, it just puts it in your face even more, right? So speak to a little bit more about that, because it's tricky, you know, navigating your way through it, because you've got your own stuff and then other people have their own stuff and then the whole collective has its own stuff. And then we're all kind of facing a mirror of exactly the same pattern, but it's expressing in different ways.
Exactly. Golly, that's a lot to unpack. What I would first share is that it's also a call right now for mindfulness. So much of what people are responding to is speculative, right? It hasn't happened yet. I have a dear friend who, oh my gosh, I mean, I feel for her. She really thinks it's the end of the world. And none of the things that she's talking about have actually happened. So I think, you know, part of it is a call to be mindful, to be in the present moment, and to inform how you feel about the world based on your moment to moment experiences of it directly, not through the lens of social media or the news or whatever, just what you experience in a day. That creates a little more hope, I think, and a little bit more rest inside. What I would also share, and I've, you know, certainly learned this myself, is that when we're triggered, no matter what, it is a call from our unhealed self or unhealed selves, right? So doing that incredible unpacking, and it is hard work, but to look at each developmental stage, you know, that you've lived, get really honest about what you experienced, what the imprint was, what was the way that you chose to cope because of what you experienced, what was the belief that was either, you know, handed down or imprinted on you, or you chose to believe as a coping mechanism, you know, doing all of that unpacking. And then once you have, and I like to name these parts of me, you know, like different names, it just makes it easier to know who's who. And then bring the energy of God through your practice, right? Finding your way to connect to that elevated energy. And maybe you're really pissed, and so all you can get to is neutral, or maybe you're starting neutral and you can get to some gratitude. I mean, there's scaffolding, right? But you give it your best effort to really connect to the energy of divine love. And then you bring that energy inside and you provide loving witness. You radiate that quality of love, you know, to your inner toddler. So for me, my inner toddler doesn't trust anyone, right? Like I was making my own sandwich at 15 months. I couldn't rely on anyone. So my inner toddler is, I'm going to do it all myself. Well, she's not wrong. But what she is asking for and all the ways that she acts out from that belief is she needs to feel love. She needs to feel safe, right? And the only person that can bring that to her is me and my connection to the divine, right? And so when you do that level of tending, what tends to happen, you can still see things that, you know, don't seem right, or, you know, it's not as if you only see like unicorns and rainbows and shit. I mean, it's not like that, but you don't have that severe emotional response. So even recently, you know, I was feeling such rage at the collective, or so I thought. And what I chose to do in feeling that was, okay, What is this? So close my eyes, connect to my heart through the breath, feel the felt sense of the energy of the divine, bring it in, find out who's the one, feeling the rage. And what I learned in that process, a couple of weeks ago, was that it was another level, right, of forgiveness for my parents, right? The ones that made me, quote unquote, feel powerless. So I was feeling powerless. I can't change any of this. Oh my gosh, if they could only see it this way, everything would be better. Well, that was my little girl feeling that. And once I tended to her and acknowledged her and hung out with her and provided loving witness to her, yeah, I still see the same things in the collective, but I feel different. I have more compassion. I have more clear seeing. And I trust the divine that all of this, in all of its mess, and all of its chaos, and all of its divisiveness, is part of a divine plan. Ultimately, it's like, shaking this all out. And it's calling each of us to decide who we want to be in it. I have a post, it hasn't yet come on Instagram yet. I did it the other day, where it's like, I'm increasingly feeling like I'm in a simulation. Like it's just starting to feel
It's
like,
just way too cartoonish. It's
yeah,
like
I'm in some kind of like video game
the
simulation
weird
thing.
villain that has all the money.
Right, like
And the
Lex
shadow
Luthor.
figure, the figure behind the president. Oh, I'm running this government. It's like, it's just so crazy, isn't it?
Well, exactly. So it's feeling very simulation. Okay. So in feeling that, what I decided to do was kind of play with it. And it's like, well, who do I want to be? What character do I want to be in this simulation? And I think most people would be like, I want to be the hero. I want to
I want
be,
to save the day.
I'm going to be the savior. Well, you're not going to be the savior with your anger and your judgment and you know better. That's not a heroic figure in the simulation. That's actually part of the problem. So, yeah, coming from a place of love when it's hard is the point. And people, even like Jesus, he's on the cross. And first, he's like, oh, God, why did you forsake me? So he's a little pissed and loses a little hope there for a minute. And then was able to say, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
I I've had some awarenesses that, well, let's just say this. I know that we're in a time when we're awakening human consciousness, and that there's this thing called Homo sapien that's been on the planet for a while. And we have this new fusion of divinity with the human vessel that's actually homo luminous, you could call it, or divine human, or consciously awake, whatever you want to say. And so I was thinking about the word conscience. And like, to me, I was saying some of these people I'm looking at don't seem to have a conscience. And as I was meditating with it, I was like, well, what if they don't? What if they're not meant to at this point? Or maybe they haven't woken that up yet. And maybe they're still in the human vessel, but they haven't, become aware of themselves as having a seed of the divine inside, right? Which is conscience. Like when we wake up our conscience, we wake up our consciousness, we become aware that our actions and words have ripple effects on others, and we start to get concerned to be mindful about how we use our actions and words so that we create beauty and that we're not creating suffering, right? Needless suffering. I mean, there's always going to be something you do or say that pisses somebody off and you can do nothing about that. But, that happens all the time. But then there's just like really crossing the line. And I'll say, like, I also had this realization that I have a lot of rules. I have a ton of rules for how to be a conscious person. There's like an entire handbook that I have. And it's like, you don't gloat when you're winning the game. Whatever, Monopoly, my dad used to teach me, you don't gloat when you're winning the game. So then I look at Elon and I say, he's gloating. And I look at Trump and I'll say, he's gloating. And I'll get really outraged that they're gloating and at the suffering and expense of other people. But that is really just a rule. It's a rule I created in my mind when I was 10, and my dad shamed me for being really excited about winning. And he said, no gloating. So like, there's other things going on. So as I was judging, have a lot of judgment towards those particular people, and especially, and I've been looking at my judgment and I'm going, what if I could flip this script and I could say, how much permission are they giving me to be prosperous? Because I had this story in my mind that you shouldn't gloat, and also you can't make a bunch of money if you're not a good person, right? Like if you're not worthy of it. And what is money? Money is prosperity. What is prosperity? Divine love. It's all kind of connected. And I was like, what if you get loved even if you're do horrible things? What if you get loved and you receive and you have bounty even if you don't follow all the rules and you're not the perfect person and you don't make all the right choices? And what if that's a permission I could give myself, that I could receive, right? I could fully receive everything life wants to offer me by releasing the judgment, right? And by forgiving myself for not following all of my own rules about how to be a really good person.
Well, and just the energetic opposite, right, of judgment is compassion. And I know for myself, after my awakening, where I didn't know how long it was going to last. And all I wanted to do was reach out to my mother, because I just understood like everything at a level that I couldn't explain, right? And the only person I could reach by phone, because I was in San Francisco at a sales meeting when this happened, was my stepfather, who had been the instrument of violence, had been the instrument of chaos, had brought, a lot of quote unquote horrible things into my home. And I felt nothing but love for him. And I told him so. So he answers the phone, and I tell him that I, forgive him and that I love him and that I understand him. And that, he was just acting from his trauma, right? And he sweetly said, well, the phone kind of like scuffled around, and he comes back and he said, well, Blonde Beauty, I don't have an explanation for this, but a golden eagle just landed on the crabapple tree in the backyard. And then I hear it shuffle again, and it's like, Regan, there's now a red fox at the base of this tree looking up at the eagle, right? And he's Comanche and Sicilian and a Scorpio. I mean, that's a lot to unpack right there. And, those symbols, aligned with his, ancestry. That was 30 years ago. And from that moment since, he's been a kind and gentle man. So that energetic transmission that I was connected to, that I embodied, and that I shared without reservation to him, changed him. So for all of us that are, got our panties in an uproar about what's going on, as
There's
my
a
mother
lot to
would
be in an uproar about, but yes.
The only thing that will make it different is that high vibration of divine love. So, you know, like whether you're right doesn't matter, it doesn't change the vibration of it, your righteousness. In fact, it probably just amplifies it, makes it actually
Yeah,
even more
because
toxic.
it increases the feeling of you should be ashamed, on the other person, right? And then that's just we're playing shame as the lowest vibration in the matrix of power versus force. It's the bottom. So yeah, like it
Exactly.
doesn't make anybody act any differently. It actually just makes people keep doing what they're doing and do it more.
Right. And for those of us that think we're conscious, who claim we're conscious, well, the proof's in the pudding in terms of, the choices you're energetically making right now. And it matters a lot.
What's really interesting is to walk that line, right? Because it's a moment by moment. You've got to really stay conscious the entire time. And you might go unconscious, and that's okay, because then you go conscious again and you wake up and you realize I just went unconscious. But it's like that. It's like it's really navigating a lot right now, because we're not going to bypass our feelings and step over it and pretend like it's not there, because that doesn't solve anything. But also, we don't want to act from those feelings in a reaction, which then, ripples more of that out there in the world. So it's kind of like, how can we support ourselves to be so present and so, with so much compassion, so much deep inner listening, and not making it about the outer world, but bringing it back inside, like, reacting to these figures. Yeah, you were telling your story about your father. It's like, yeah, I had a man in my life when I was 2 to 5 that was quite toxic and demeaning to my mom and violent towards her and mean, And so, yeah, like that is a reaction that I have. And I know many women have, many women have experienced that, and many men have experienced the opposite, right? So it depending on what we have experienced really shows what our projections are in the outer world and how we're perceiving it. Because some people are really celebrating it, because they had a different experience.
Well, and
So
I know for me, I mean, here at the age of 3, went to a school where I'm learning meditation and photographing my energy field with Carillion film and singing songs about divine love and conscious thought. I mean, that's exceptional, right? And then I have this incredible awakening. Well, could I still, with just those two things in mind, make misaligned choices, feel hopeless, get mad, like whatever? And I finally got to a place where, oh, wow, like here I have known. I mean, I have known things. And could I still show up in a misaligned way? So imagine for someone that doesn't have any of that. Boy, that should facilitate a little bit more ease and having some compassion. Like, just as Jesus said, forgive them. They know not what they do. And it's true. I mean, not that they aren't maybe being strategic and, whatever in terms of the things that they're doing, but the lack of awareness, right? The fact that they have never had maybe a moment of connecting to the felt sense of the divine. So if you can, acknowledge that, maybe you can give these people a little more latitude.
yeah,
And
because
maybe that's what they need.
until we have that conscience, right? Wake up, that conscious aspect of us that I'm calling the conscience. Until that part wakes up, we're kind of ignorant about, the effects. Like we're really focused here and not really thinking about anything else except this inner drive, for whatever it is that needs satiating, that needs to be filled. The hunger, really a deep, deep hunger for love. I think a really deep hunger for love. And so like it's such an exaggeration what we're seeing, because all of us have pursued this deep hunger for love in this capitalistic system for generations and generations and generations, right? This seeking outside fill enough to feel, and what the indigenous people call this watiko, which is just an insatiable hunger, and literally nothing will fill it. Like there's never enough. Like you can't have enough money. If there's anything that Musk has shown us, you cannot have enough money to be satiated. It's never enough. If you've got all that, you need more. And so that to me is really the point of compassion, is that you're ruled by something that's actually a lie, instead of being in touch with the true nature of love, right? The true fulfillment that comes from within, that you're happy, you're in love with yourself, maybe not happy. I mean, we could have all kinds of emotions, but you are in touch with yourself. You are at peace with yourself. You're in love inside of your own heart, no matter what's going on. You might have, like you said, you might have a terrible experience, but you can always come back here because you know you have this heart and you have this connection to the divine, and all you got to do is tap into it and open it up. And that's the thing that's actually fulfilling. That's the thing that actually sets you at peace, so that you're not constantly craving and striving and trying to get. And that's the thing that ends all those patterns. So there's a greater wealth. And I saw it when I met the indigenous people in the mountains of Peru that had, earth covered feet and sandals everywhere, and, ponchos and, mud brick homes. And my entire REI outfit and backpack was worth more than their whole community house and all of this. But I was the one that was impoverished. I was the one that was poor. They had all the wealth inside of them. That's what I feel is what you're talking about. It's like the power of love, the true wealth happens when we're in touch with that divine inside. That's the true wealth. And being able to see where people are at does help us to have compassion.
Well, and I think if you're truly connected to the divine, you're not afraid. So underneath any of our responses to any of this, right, I would say almost all of it is fear. But if you truly know that you're divine and eternal, you're not going to come from that fearful reaction, because you know you can take a long view and it's like, wow, we've got eternity to figure this out. And yeah, right now is hard. And right now, it's X, Y, and Z as I see it, but I can take a long view. And I can, just like those beings taught me, I can actually choose to love all of it. And I think that might be the point.
Yeah, your experience with the entity at the end of your bed, demon entity, whatever you want to call it. That's just like when I've had those experiences where you wake up in the middle of the night and you've got the ears ringing, and it's like, and it's like this menacing, threatening kind of white noise energy, and you're trying to intimidate. And that same intimidation energy is what is over here too with that situation, right? And the government and everything happening there is that intimidation energy. It's the same energy. And so it's like, okay, yeah, as soon as I decided that I know who I am in truth, and I'm not going to be afraid because I know if this life ends, and I truly accepted it. Like, because it was one thing to just kind of know it, but I had to like go, well, yeah, I am eternal. And if this life ends, there'll be another. So I'm really okay. I haven't lost anything. That's when it really clicked, and I just stopped being in, they just stopped coming around, basically.
Yeah. And I think just given the energetics of the day, like it's really, if we want to quote unquote make a difference, then don't be afraid.
Yeah, work with the fear, work with actually embodying, knowing yourself as divine, right? Work on that embodiment inside. Forgive and heal. So what's something you want to offer towards forgiveness? Like what's a practice that you do that could support people in this moment?
Yeah. Forgiveness ultimately isn't the ultimate act of self-care. It's not about making what happened okay. In fact, it's more the opposite. Like what you did is so not okay. I'm choosing not to be connected to it anymore. It's like energetic bolt cutters, but those bolt cutters are unconditional love. That's what cuts those cords. So, I mean, it's hard to have like a specific like recipe for that because everyone's different and they have different awarenesses and different practices. But for me, on a practical level, like with my stepdad, I was connected so completely to God that I truly felt nothing but love for him. But years later, as that faded, right, as that consciousness was no longer available through grace, I got, a little more curious to continue to, work on forgiveness, like about what he had known. Ask questions about, his childhood. Learned he was abandoned as a newborn, left to die, you know? So I think we can, in our personal lives, not as it relates to, global politics, but in our personal lives, we can be curious and we can maybe learn a little bit more about these people that we perceive as perpetrators. And that can help us, have more compassion, which is an ingredient for forgiveness. And we have to really acknowledge, I didn't used to do this, I was really good at leaping over stuff. Acknowledge the truth, right? The felt sense of the trauma that we've known and hold loving witness to that part of ourselves. And in so doing, also understand and see all the ways that wounded person acted out, right? Like I did immoral things, occasionally in my past. I did things I'm quote unquote not proud of because those wounded parts were, acting out from their point of view. And so if you can provide that level of love and unconditional love to yourself, it's the only way you have any opportunity to do it for anyone else. So there's a lot of levels to it, right? Learn as much as you can, be curious, have appreciative inquiry, try to learn what that person has known. Maybe even go a little deeper, like I did. I talk about this in my book, and I was able to understand the trauma, that my father held and never spoke about. I put out a prayer and anyway, learned all that. And in finding that out, boy, did I perceive the choices he made differently. So there's some practical, like concrete, like non quote unquote energetic things to do that help. But I think it really has everything to do with the unconditional love that you provide for yourself. And then once you truly have done that, you don't even have a question about how you do it for someone else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it's hardest to forgive ourselves. And yeah, when we explore, like when I've explored, like you said, when I've explored my judgments about other people and I've brought it back inside, inevitably I find some place inside of myself where the reason I'm so harshly judging something is because of some decision I made about myself, right? So some judgment I had about myself or something that I did previously that then they're doing something similar. It's reminding me of that judgment is still inside. And so in a way, like this whole time frame is an opportunity, like rapid fire, find all the places that you're still judging yourself, bring yourself
Exactly.
some forgiveness, let yourself off the hook, forgive fully everything inside of you that you still holding against the light, and let yourself receive love, let yourself receive forgiveness, and then be that conduit for others to wake up to it, right? So we can't like shove a bunch of forgiveness on somebody. We like, here's love, but we can hold it in ourselves, right? And that is a frequency. It's like heart coherence. You work with heart coherence, right? It like you guys, I didn't say this, but Regan also worked with HeartMath Institute, and she did. So if you want to know about heart coherence and how you do that, that's at HeartMath Institute. I should have probably said that up front, but anyway, it's like we're already in the journey because of the other conversation 3 weeks ago
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, like that piece around the resonance that you're talking about, being that divine love, allowing that divine love to fully immerse in you and to be that conduit of that love, to let it alchemize any of those places holding back from love within you. And then that can easily be shared with others just by the heart coherence.
Yeah, and there's, other practices actually very similar to heart math. In Buddhism, metta, loving kindness. And in that prayer, right, you do it for yourself, you do it next for someone that's easy to do it for. And then you bring an image of Elon Musk, in your case, and you truly feel and say, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you have peace, may you have ease. Like offer your prayer to the person that you think is the villain.
Yes, the villains.
Yeah, we're in the simulation, right? And like, yeah, so be that medicine woman who has no fear of Elon and can sit and can radiate divine love to him.
Yeah, that's gonna produce more of the results we want, everybody, than hexing them.
Yeah, don't do that.
Hexing them is just gonna create more hoocha, more mess, more heavy energy, more entanglements.
Well, and just the concept of, that you learn in high school physics of resonance, right? Like what you put out, you get back.
Uh-huh.
So if you're hexing, guess what's coming back at you?
Right. Exactly.
That's silly. So, yeah, and connecting as much as you can to the inherent innocence of someone, no matter how they're showing up.
It's challenging. It's challenging. I think we all know that by now.
Yeah.
It's not the easiest thing to do.
No, and the point of it all is to use it when it's hard, right? Like I love that about before the fall, before the apple, and Adam and Eve are just like in the Garden of Eden in this like
Just
blissed
having
out
an eternal
state.
party.
Yeah, they're just all blissed out. Well, they're not growing. They're not learning. They're not being tested. But boy, as soon as they, take that bite, and maybe the point of that story, right, is to help us consciously return to that state of being, which means we have to see it and honor it in everything.
Yeah, I mean, there is nothing outside of God, so that means this is all part of God. I mean, otherwise you think God is just partial, and something else could have more power than it. It's like, no, it's everything, all that is, including the stuff you don't like.
Yeah, and like I even say to my kids who are, they've had stuff. And I say, even though it's really hard right now, there will be a point of time in your life where you'll look back on all of this and it will all make perfect sense. I mean, I know that. I think you know that, right? So as it relates to this collective quote unquote mess, maybe not in our lifetime, but somewhere in our lineage, they'll look back at what's happening now and they'll understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going wherever it's going, and we do have agency. And like you said, we can fill it up with love. We can work on the places within ourselves that we feel triggered. We can heal those places so we're at least neutral. If we can't get more loving than that, we're at least neutral. And
Nutra's great.
then at least you're not in a panic, so there's benefits to this. And the more of us that are in heart coherence will actually bring some order, some ordered energy, some
Well,
harmony.
yeah, because it's all a reflection of the collective's lack of order. So the only thing we can do to make it more orderly
Is to become ordered.
is to become orderly. And that's the only thing you can affect, truly. So, golly, get to it.
Yeah. Sink your roots down into the soil, everybody. Raise your branches to the sky. Take some deep inhale breaths. Open your heart. Bring in the divine love. Let it flow through you. Let Mother Earth ground you. It's all a movie. My dad used to say it's just a movie. Of course,
and
he left before this part. He told my mom, "Oh, this is going to get nasty. I don't want to be part of this." He died. My mom's like, "He left us, and this is what he said." I'm like, "No, Mom, we can handle it. That's why we're the ones here."
And disconnect from X and I mean, just try to.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not on there. I don't.
I mean,
Even look at it.
try to quote unquote judge your day based on your direct experiences of your day, not something that's being portrayed through your phone or through that toxic box called the television. Because you know what? There's manipulation there.
There is. I mean, you can get briefings of what's been voted on. And I think it is important to stay awake and prepared because you might need to ask yourself if there's someone being harmed right in front of you, if you're going to stand up and do something with that. So I do think there's, we do need to have been made those decisions within ourselves. We need to know where we stand within ourselves and how we want to show up and what's our response. And in the moment, we'll never know what the response is because it'll just happen. But if we bring that light through and we bring that divine love through and we kind of let it inform us, like what would I do? What's the best response in this kind of situation? How could I show up in the best way? And that's just my thing because I don't want to repeat history. I don't want to be the good German that didn't do anything.
Yeah. And I think we also all can be a little more self-sufficient. Start making sure that you have, means. I mean, growing food there's just smart things to do right now, but you don't have to do it with panicked, righteous judgment.
Right. You can just go, oh, food might be an issue. Check. Let me go find out where the food forests are or the farmers markets or the local farmers. Okay, great. You might just need to make your checklist, right? So that you know how to provide for yourself.
And look at information that's a direct source, not characterized through someone else's perception of that information.
Right. Which is challenging because
it's tough to do.
Everybody has an opinion and a perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we're all in the future right now. We're all in a panic sense of the future, and none of it is actually happening. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of an energetic waste of time.
Yeah. What you want to do is keep enough attention on it so that you know what is actually happening, but not so much that you're doom scrolling. Doom scrolling is not helpful.
I think it's really hard right now to actually know what's happening. But what I do know is happening is how I feel, right? That I know. That's a direct thing I can know. And that's a direct thing that I can work to change if I sense that what I'm feeling isn't serving me and therefore can't serve anyone else.
Right. If you're picking up on some of the collective panic and anxiety and, it's easy to do as an empath right now on the collective is to feel that in the space and to just realize that that's probably not you per se, but it's something that you're aware of, right? And yeah, ground it, use our tools. We've been preparing for this for a while, so ground, use our tools, transmute energy, alchemize, bring it back into peace, into what the Carol people called Aini, right relationship, and bring everything. That's the order. That's the natural energy is Aini. It's right relationship. It's Moonai. It's love, unconditional love. Yes, we're getting our final exams, everybody. Yay! So
Super
fun.
fun.
Happening
So much
really
fun.
intensely. Woohoo! So
Though I will say, at least through my direct experience, when you truly know how to do it, everything changes, including, in my case, the people, that I thought were the quote unquote problem.
yes, that does your perception flips. Hmm.
Yeah. And when you can
Sometimes.
truly see, the divinity in someone else, regardless of the choices they make, right? Then they have more of an opportunity to see that within themselves.
That was a really powerful experience that you had with your stepfather. And I had that with my mom, so I know that experience. It doesn't always get all the way there for whatever reason, because everybody has choice and agency, right? So not everybody's willing. But when they're willing, boy, it works out good.
Yeah, and like I say
Really
in my
awesome.
book, imagine if we all walked around with poster board affixed to our bodies front and back, delineating bullet to bullet the traumas we've known.
Mm.
And we all walk around like that. I think we'd treat each other differently. And I think we'd have more insight into the quote unquote bad behavior that we're judging, right? So I think what we can do instead, since we're not walking around with poster board, is just know that we all carry trauma. Yeah, different kinds, different amplitudes, but nobody gets out of being on earth, unfortunately, without it. And so, can we just automatically bring that compassion,
Yeah.
that love, that clear seeing, that knowing that, wow, underneath this behavior is something?
Hmm. Yeah. And taking that moment of pause, taking that breath and spaciousness, giving yourself space. That's something that I found really helpful through this is recognizing when my cup is full and, like you said, not engaging, shutting it off, going into my own body, being present, using my tools, my breath, my just spaciousness, really floating or whatever, and letting it all process. Because there's just a lot to process right now. There's
Well,
like
yeah,
a lot to
absolutely.
process.
And like Jesus said, you can't put new wine in old wineskins. So for each of us, if we're wanting to hold this other awareness, right, there's work to do.
Yeah, we're clearing our cups.
Yeah, you gotta get new wineskins to
Yeah,
hold this, divine love.
we're
So
upgrading.
yeah, it's a huge upgrade and a lot of destruction. A lot of Kali energy right now.
Yep. And it's
Yep,
putting it in our face so we can do what? Heal the
love.
past, make new choices, and love. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Simple to say, sometimes uncomfortable to do.
And thankfully, all the sacred books say the same thing. There is a happy ending.
Yay. If we're not happy yet, we're not at the
No,
ending. We're still not
we're
there
at the
yet.
hard part.
It's
We're at
not
the
quite
real
there
hard
yet.
part.
We're getting
Yeah,
closer.
that's right.
Well, beautiful. I know you have so much to share, and I know your book, Tragic Magic, has so many beautiful stories in it. So much beautiful wisdom you have to share. And you have an Instagram, and I don't know if you're on Facebook, but
I am. Yeah.
on
Yeah.
Facebook as well.
Yeah. So when I post, it posts to both Instagram and Facebook. But I don't know. There seems to be a lot more people on Instagram. I'm new to all this.
Your
Like
people are more on
5 months
Instagram.
ago, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, Reagan, it's time. Um, yeah. So I went from 200 followers on Instagram to, I don't know, I think I'm like close to 11,000 now. So something is resonating, which is nice. But yeah, people can find me there or regancaruthers.com. There's some practices and some content there. And I'm in the process of revising that site. And so it'll be new in about 3 months. Yeah, and just keep going. We got all just keep going.
Just keep swimming. Just keep
That's
swimming.
right.
We can do it, you guys. We're already doing it. So just don't give up. Just keep swimming, keep swimming, keep swimming. And yeah, and keep checking in here. We'll have more broadcasts for you every week. And yeah, together we rise. Together we rise. We're doing it. We are in the process. And so much love to everybody who's tuned in. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Regan, for being here. And please share this out with anybody that you think would benefit. And also leave us a review and a like and a subscribe in all the places you find us. And I'm going to give kisses now. Would you like to help me give energetic Reiki kisses?
Sure.
Everybody? Okay, everybody. We love you. We love you. We love you. Here comes all that divine love. Here comes kisses. Mwah. And we'll see you in all the ways we see you. We love you, everybody. So much grace. And talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
If you found even one gold nugget in this episode of Soul Nectar Show, will you do us a favor? Will you subscribe, like, and share this episode? Maybe even write a comment and let us know what you thought about it. We really, really want to engage with you at a much deeper level. Let's be part of community together. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now. To dive in deeper to nourishing conversation, visit soulnectar.show.
Soul Nectar Show. Awaken away to show. Take a sip from the drip of nectar, from the source of who you are. Yeah, yeah.